Unless you have another way to refer you.
Keith is fine. Keith is
Keith,
fine.
all right.
Hello, everybody. This is Nicholas Peter Ugero. Today, I have the pleasure and honor of having Cory, Edmund, Endrulat, and Keith Little on my channel. How you guys doing today?
Great, great.
Good, good, yeah.
Good to be
Uh,
here.
Chilling.
Absolutely.
Here to
I
learn.
very much appreciate you guys coming on and taking the time to talk with me today. So this is pretty much open-ended. We're going to be talking about natural law, breaking that down really quick, just for people that are unaware of it. Common law, break that down as well for people. But before we even do that, if both of you guys want to just give a nice introduction of yourself, what you're all about, what you like, spend a lot of your time like researching, what's some of like the foundational like knowledge that you think that you possess like the greatest amount of, just what your specialties are, all that stuff.
All right.
Well,
You go first.
I'll go first real quick. Because the point blank thing that I want to say is I'm always seeking truth, nothing less. So my whole life has always been knowing that there isn't any real truth that all of us can know. So I just want to know the greater truth that I can. So every day I try to learn as much as I can. And of course, put it back out there.
Yeah, so Keith, if you want to also let people know like who you are, what you're all about, where they can even find you, like do you create any sort of content?
Well, yeah, I've got I've been doing this research thing for 7 years solid. I quit the banking 7 years ago, job 7 years ago, no license, no identification, all that stuff 7 years ago. And I've pretty much subsisted on nothing but contributions and bartering. I spent 7 months in the mountain trying to find myself. I think I did a pretty good job. Spent another couple of years down in the Ozarks, adventuring farther on that trip. And in the meantime, I've been doing all this research along the way, usually with just a phone. It wasn't until the last couple, 2, 3 years that I finally got a laptop and really dug into it at a home base. And ever since then, I've just been building a file of all the information that I need to express myself in a proper manner in all these different venues. Because I've got 94 cases against me in that local district court. And come to find out, it's all about that legal name and not having a spiritual foundation yourself and not being able to recognize there's definitely a distinct difference. And once I realized that, that's been my only purpose, assert my spiritual presence over the manual presence.
I love it. I love it. Cory, break it down for us. What you're all about, where people can find you. Like, do you create any content? I don't know.
I don't know. Do I? Yeah, so you can find me, Cory, Nature is the Answer online. And I do a lot of videos. I write books. I do seminars. Try to do everything in the sense of just expressing my passion. Same thing as Keith here, really. I pursue truth. I think that's why we're all here, to be honest. We're all seeking this greater truth beyond the illusions. Often I talk about the man-made world versus the natural world. I create a philosophy called Natureosophy in relationship to that. One of my particular focuses that a lot of people interview me about is abolitionism. From the 1800s, I brought the voices, particularly of that movement, back to life in the modern day. William Lloyd Garrison, Aidan Ballou, and a lot of individuals who were rather spiritual, but very much seeking the truth. That's what matters. And it just so happens it leads them down a spiritual path, but they use that usually as the means to create more freedom in the world. Ending slavery is not an easy pursuit after thousands of years. These individuals knew that. That's why they were attacked. That's why they were accused by the media of all sorts of things. And that happens nowadays among those people who seek the truth and those who are spiritual. Oh, you're going into all this weird territory, Cory. Where are you going? Talking about politics and religion or whatever. It's all the things that people are afraid of talking about that I'm not afraid of talking about, because that's where the truth is. And the truth is everywhere, but it's definitely in these studies which focus on studying the truth. That includes science, that includes religion, that includes everything. So nothing is hands off from me. What Keith has to share here, I'm totally open to it. I want to learn. We're all forever learning. And in fact, what I'm learning more than learning is unlearning. I'm learning more about unlearning, and that's how I'm actually learning. Quite a twist of words, but really it's just to say that the truths are there, like I said, beyond the illusion, and therefore getting past the illusions requires emptying our mind, opening up our hearts, and opening up their minds. And the Chinese have a term for that, Xin, which means heart mind. So those two are connected in the Eastern sense. So I really much care for you guys and anyone who cares for the truth or cares about humanity. And I think, we all have something to share. So I'm not definitely knowing it all. And like I said, to claim, I am actually trying to learn less, trying to simplify my worldview over time. And I don't have to try. It just comes naturally with pursuing more knowledge. You realize, oh, shoot, the more I know, the less I know. The same conclusion Socrates came to, and many other philosophers in history. So glad to be here. Thank you, Nicholas, for inviting me.
Yes, not a problem whatsoever. I'm so glad you guys were able to come on there. It's already really valuable to me. So, so yeah, we're talking about natural law, common law. If both of you guys, take your turn, like break down what is natural law, because we're basically talking about like just like God ordained rights, and just like right versus wrong, like what's a wrong, what's a right action. Can we just, dictate it based on our location or the time and place? Or is it something that's just consistent across time? Like, doesn't matter if it's in the past or present or in the future. Is there something, can we actually identify an action objectively as either being right or wrong? Is that like, I'd love to get your guys' take on that.
Well, when it comes to the common law, it used to be pretty brutish. And when they came in with the equity law and merged it, it was because of reasons of the eye for an eye, tooth for the tooth thing was taken wrong. If you've got the ability to reform a man, even after he's killed somebody, the eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth doesn't take effect. The term killing is meant for a purposeful thing. If you have a need to kill something for sustenance or something like that, that's called killing. But to kill without necessity is murder. And so we have this society that's defined this term as murder in so many different capacities, as well as things like rape and theft and all that. And we still have countries today that sometimes will take and cut off somebody's hand because they committed a theft. Now, that isn't taking something from somebody and then turning around and eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, taking something from that other person by taking his hand off. That's not what it's meant for. And so the equity came in to try to get people to think about that. But then again, we still have this thing about cultures. Every culture has their own laws. In that, that's that common law where there are cultural differences in how they interpret the various different sources of power or life, things like that. And obviously, it's because they're in different territories. They have different environments, things like that. So they tend to worship different things at different levels. Somebody on a shoreline or say on an island might tend to worship both the water and the sky more than the land, because it's so much more abundant, and therefore pay less attention to the land that they should truly be worshiping and destroy it, things like this. And it comes down to the common law isn't quite so common anymore. So it's a matter of the equity part of each individual realizing that they have their own power and their source in this world, and they do have their own effect, good or bad. And if you're going to go around being mischievous and taunting danger, you might end up with a shorter life. If you go around like our brother Cory here, realizing that the more you learn, the less you really know, and just learning how to just enjoy life and be part of life and take it with its ups and downs, you're going to learn a lot more from it. It just becomes a natural roller coaster ride through life where you're prepared for the next time it goes up, and it seems like you're slowing down because you are. But once you get over it, you better be prepared for go down. It's all a part of life, and nobody wants to deal with those balances. They want something nice and steady where they're comfortable and things are convenient and it seems like a smooth ride. But then when something happens, we get all caught up in our emotions and what? And it's just, like I said, common law is more common sense than anything, and people have less of it today.
Yeah, I like that, man. You're talking about balance and talking about people trying to find a steady ground. I agree. Life is quite the roller coaster. When you think you know something, it's like, well, I didn't really know it. And then, there's always something new to learn, which is why I'm open to learning from you. I actually have a lot of friends who talk about American common law in particular because I've had discussions like these before. Nicholas, it's actually not uncommon actually in this community. Jonathan Wright as well talks about this subject as well. But as far as I'm concerned, you are correct in saying that in the natural law community, there aren't a lot of people talking about it. It's really just Jonathan and me, as far as I'm aware of. It's really cool to see Jonathan is really like getting deep into it. I have taken some restraints from it, only for the sake of my own personal philosophy, but I learn it as well. And I actually am an American state national. Like I've done the paperwork, I've done a lot of that stuff. I do meetings with a lot of people. I'm in assemblies that are here in the United States. Not every country has the same, and I'm also aware that there's different types of common law. I'm aware that there's different types of jurisdictions. You mentioned land. I know that there's, I think, air, water, and that's how we kind of got into all this mess as well. And then, of course, comparing corporations and United States of America Inc. versus what is actually the real America per se. There's a lot of talk about that, and I'm aware of a lot of it. But when I talk about natural law, it's about getting to the roots because a lot of people that I talk to also about common law will acknowledge and say it's based on natural law, or they say it's based on the 10 Commandments. And the 10 Commandments come down to, do no harm, do not steal, the general basic morality that most people hold. And that is typically what most people refer to when they say natural law, actually. So I think there's some bit of a convergence between the natural law crowd and the common law crowd, mostly because they're based on one another. Because even when you have
Right.
natural law, when you put it into practice, it becomes common law in the sense that you might want to set up a court system and have a common law court. And people can totally do that in the world imagined by this natural law community, mostly anarchist. They may say, oh, we don't want rulers or masters over our lives. They're not saying that there's not going to be leaders. They're not saying there's not going to be courts. They're not saying there's not going to be justice. They're not saying that there's no rules. They're just saying there's no rulers. And they're saying that the authority is in nature or in God or in truth itself, not in man. And so that actually agrees with a lot of the proponents of common law that I've met. And I tell them, I say openly, I say, hey, if everything what you're doing is voluntary, I have no problem with it. And you know what? That's why I support them. That's why I'm always at their groups. We all care about freedom and we're all doing it voluntarily. And to go even further than that, the people who talk about this knowledge, the common law community, um, they are not playing the political game of left versus right. They're not playing the symptom management. They're getting to the root cause, the language, the symbolism, the ideas, the philosophy. And I like that a lot. Now, I do think it can get off the edge when it talks about paperwork, when it gets into materialism, when it gets into that is the way you become free. I think it doesn't end there, kind of like what we were saying before, how you have to keep learning. I don't think it ends there. Like some people will just say, oh, I've done my paperwork. Oh, I'm done. I don't need to learn anything else. No, it's like the language is constantly evolving, the laws are constantly changing, and there's a lot that you have to deal with. Also, not to mention, but you're dealing with, we're still in a system that we're battling. And we have to also wake up many other people who are not in that system. So there's a lot of confrontations, but even in the natural law community, there's a lot of problems that I've noticed too, especially with speaking about objective morality and saying this is the way morality must be defined. They get just as specific as the people who say, well, paperwork must be done this exact way. It's great to see people have a dedication as to saying this is the way things must be done. But I do always encourage that people have an open mind to many different strategies. I've come across people who follow Anna von Reitz and people who follow. There's another guy, right? There's the other one that goes around talking about it, and there's a bunch of other people who talk about it. And there's people like David Miller in the past, people who talk about quantum grammar. There's a lot of ways of approaching it, and I don't think we should limit our options when it comes to attaining freedom. If we can attain freedom and we can do so voluntarily, and we can prevent violence now, I want to do everything I can in my power to do so right now. And so that does mean using some paperwork to my benefit, actually. If it can
Yeah.
prevent taxation, prevent violence, prevent the problems that are the root cause problems to our world, not voting in some politician, not picking a side, I'm going to partake in it. but I'm also going to recognize something much higher beyond it. And I'm going to share that with this community as well. So when I talk to people in the common law communities, I mention natural law. When I'm in the natural law communities, I mention common law. And it goes both ways. And I think that's what we're doing right here, right now.
Yeah, and then in regards to your comment about the natural law and common law, I see it the same way in the sense that common law in its natural state, um, say in cases of murder and rape and things like that, have nothing to do with the common monetary system. So therefore, it doesn't have to do with contracts or trust law. That's the merger of equity with common law, so that we could change the murder for murder thing. So that if somebody murdered, there was still a redemption possibility. So you don't murder them, you try to swing them with the trust, and then help them learn how to contract with the people to earn their way into that society again. That was the equity way of going ahead and saying, okay, you've been a bad boy, and the rest of society wants to kill you, but we want to give you that chance. We want to give that final doubt, say, because your redeemer is him, the same as ours. So we can't really place that judgment, but we can keep a very watchful eye on you. So we're going to do that for a while. While we're doing that, we're going to help educate you. If you refuse the education, then we may be left in no other term. But you always have that option. That's what the equity does. So in that, the common law, where you've got that murder thing, now you've got a civil venue where you've got the rest of society that can, it's just like the jury nullification. If they really thought honestly that the man needed to be killed, murdered, just like they murdered or he murdered somebody, then that would be the equitable resolution. But most people aren't going to think about that. If you have a secondary option that would allow them, particularly family members, would scream out about that. No, he's savable. We can redeem him. And that's the main purpose of the scripture, is to redeem our brother. No matter what they sold off, no matter what kind of debt they pose, we're supposed to be able to come in and redeem them.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
And the natural side doesn't allow for that. The equity allows for that spiritual redemption.
I will say, upon a lot of my works, I talk about the idea that governments, especially what I'm talking about is the corporate governments, violence-based governments, statist governments, to be particular. If you're aware of the word statism, they are basically replacing God or nature's authority directly. And I think you're kind of saying that, in the sense of, okay, you need to be redeemed. But here are them saying, well, you need to be in our system. You need to be redeemed by joining us. And then here are you guys and us. And we're like, you need to join us. And then the individuals in between, like, well, I was born into that system. I had no choice. And then this one, I have a choice to join. And am I going to take that choice? Is it a wiser, more knowledgeable choice? But it requires work, it requires effort. And I think that's why a lot of people don't look into this type of knowledge that we share, because it requires work, it requires effort for such a redemption. But the funny thing is, it's quite ironic, because it's the natural world. It's the world that was beyond the man-made world. It was the world beyond this illusion, the fictions. So it's quite funny that we've accustomed our fictions to be the natural world, and we've not, and we're not aligned or familiar with the natural world, that we actually have to return to it. But a lot of people, I think, can get stuck on, well, what if we can use paperwork or voting or these different man-made mechanisms to try to get to that natural world? And that can be counterintuitive. In the same way, somebody says, well, let's say there's this thing called natural law, and this is exactly how nature operates. This is what we call the law. Nature is law. Like, you can't escape nature itself. What I call natural law is literally just nature, right? And that includes everything that is there, origin in particular. So it's interesting that people want to really get stuck on, this is the way to do things. And if we don't do things this way, it's going to be problematic, because unfortunately it's not a universal or timeless point of view. So I do go with the times, and I do accept the changes that have to be done within my own life. But if I don't take the step back and see the bigger picture, I'm missing it. I'm missing a big piece of humanity's evolution. And that's why sometimes I like to focus on the simplistics. There's not a lot of young people joining the assemblies for a reason. The assemblies are talking in mumbo jumbo half the time. I still don't even understand them, even after being in many of their meetings. It's because it's a bunch of terminology and word games. But what about just connecting to the individual as a human being? Are we not already dehumanized as it is? So these are the concerns that I have. And it's not, again, it's not that I don't partake in some of these rituals per se on my own. It's that I see something much higher. And seeing that higher truth draws me toward recognizing the problems of the lesser. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know where you want to take this, Nicholas. But like, I'm not necessarily on the I'm this natural law, I'm this common law. Like, I'm not going to put myself in a box, but I am going to try my best to attain freedom, within my life. And like I said, voluntarily gathering with people to make it happen. I think there's also a bunch of other solutions that all these groups of people ignore, like food forests and growing food.
Yeah, and there's a link I put in the private chat there for you, Nick, in case you want to drop it out there for the rest of the folks or put it down in the detail section. That's Napolitano on taking rights seriously, and he talks about natural law, positive law, Aquinas, Aristotle, things like that, and he does a very good job of it there. One of my favorite guys when it comes to law, and it's no wonder they didn't want him on that panel of judges in the Supreme Court.
He does have a lot. Yeah, he has a lot of good clips online, actually. Still a lot of stuff from his old shows, like back in the day, years back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you guys for that. Yeah, so if we're talking about like natural law, common law, so for people that are just have no idea what the hell we're talking about, if you guys just want to like what would be the practical, like why would this help anybody? Like if we're trying to reach just somebody that just really has no idea or maybe thinks we're stupid for even talking about something like this, what would be maybe like a couple bullet points or something that you think that would like really maybe like impact them, maybe inspire them, or give them a reason to think a little bit differently than how they currently are?
The way I look,
birth certificate, maybe.
well, yeah, the way I was going to look at it is, you got the natural sense that you live your life, and that's where you act out on intuition, instincts, emotions, things like that. And then you got the spiritual sense where you feel like you've got this guide and there's a moral perspective about things, and it's not just your natural instincts, because your natural instincts can now be quelled. Instead of reacting in such fear that you kill something immediately out of fright or something, you take that moment to see it for another creature that it truly is. Are you going to kill a bunny rabbit versus a bear? You've got choices to make in regards to what your observations are. Then the next one is your manual aspect, which is what you're talking about there, the birth certificate. And that's the one that displaces us from both our natural sense and our spiritual sense by creating that manual observance. Everybody looks at that name and the record that it poses, and the stories and the comments that everybody else makes about each other. And that's total fiction. Has nothing to do with reality.
I see this knowledge being helpful for everybody, because the common law stuff can help you if you are in a situation where, let's say, a cop is being tyrannical against you for no reason and pulling you over for something that is victimless, for just, because they want to gain money that day. The whole system is rigged against you once you actually study it and you realize it's not about justice. It's not about, saving the innocent. It's about filling the judge's paychecks with bond money. And everything's about bonds and James Bond and trusts and all this stuff that they've got people into that they don't know about. That's, I think, coming from the common law perspective. You can tell me if I'm wrong, Keith. But then from the natural law perspective, here's this world that you didn't know about, and it's called reality. And you've been kept from reality because you have been distracted. You have been kept in illusions, whether it be material, whether it just be the government and their school long indoctrination, telling you how history is, telling you what to think instead of how to think. And this is why people talk about the trivia method to learn. That can be very powerful in an individual's life, learning how to think for the first time, or really just taking the time to reflect and look at universal and timeless concepts, because that is what definition of law, immutable conditions that cannot be changed, natural meaning inherent within the universe. So that means looking past, again, all the man made systems, and therefore you'll actually unite with humankind rather than creating division. So that's a really big thing if you're saying, okay, this is helpful for a lot of people. It's like, instead of talking about left and right, instead of talking about this country and that country and all the many laws and everything within it, let's look at the bigger picture and see, okay, we're actually all in the human species. We all can align to each other. In fact, we already do in most of our life. We just give a small exception in politics, and that small exception builds up and it turns into tyranny, and then it turns into democide, and it happens time and time again. And that's the number one cause of unnatural death. So if you want to prevent democide and you want to prevent these systems of tyranny, you get to the root cause, which is that belief system that gives rise to them. That belief system gets dispelled by non-contradictive morality, adjusting your own morals and realizing the golden rule, essentially: do unto others. And every single culture, every single religion teaches it, but they don't actually put it into practice when you look at governments, when you look at the systems that we have created. So that means we're violating our basic morals and our basic understandings of nature, and with a illusion of a system that we were born into. Most people just feel like they have no choice, and so they don't even bother fighting it. So I
Yeah.
think people should fight it on all fronts. Absolutely. That doesn't mean necessarily voting in politics, though, because that directly reinforces the belief system of statism. Whereas if you're going through any of these other pursuits, common law or natural law, you're actually not reinforcing statism, which I think is actually really core and essential. But you can be reinforcing it if you're not talking about it. And I do see a lot of people in the common law assemblies that don't even know what statism is. They've never even heard of voluntarism. And for them, natural law is just survival of the fittest. They don't apply under a moral context as I do or a lot of other people do. And that's okay. I can understand where they're coming from. But I could also, like, if they have an open mind, share with them and say, no, it actually just means, like, look, our conscience, the golden rule, and all these universal fabrics that we recognize are so important that we can't contradict. Because we're making these contradictions and we don't realize we're making them. And that's why we're in a situation we don't want to be in, because we think we're creating order when in reality we're creating chaos. So very important that we get our priorities straight and create the world that we want to create by knowing what we're doing. And we can only do that with philosophy, with morality, and with spirituality. So we can't do that with any other method, as far as I'm aware of.
Yeah, and that's correlative to Hitler's willing executioners. When we have a statism that gets so abundant that everybody believes in it because of their indoctrination, their education, the propaganda, the advertising, the news media, being able to sit in that comfort zone and have everything so convenient. Then we become an entire society of Hitler's willing executioners all over again. We're willing to sit there on that couch and watch them lights and hear them sirens as we peek our head out, look down the street, couple blocks are falling off one of our neighbors. But instead of doing anything about it, we go back to the couch, start stuffing ourselves with processed foods, drinking down that poison, watching somebody else's dramatic life on the boob tube because ours is so great. The next night, same thing happens. You see the lights and hear the sirens down the other end of the block, just a block away now. They're hauling somebody else. And the next night, same thing across the street. Next night, it's your neighbor. When do you think they're coming for you? That's the way it works. It's repeated time and time again throughout history. Eons. And nobody wants to see it. They don't want to see the truth. They'd rather have the convenience of being able to live their life in convenience and fear dying one day, rather than live a life full of adventure and knowledge and observance and beauty. And it's just amazing how much they're willing to give up.
Yeah. And that's why I don't like to dwell on the problems, because there's actually, like, a lot of solutions that we're talking about. Like when you come to see like what you just mentioned, it's actually, like you said, a beautiful thing. So we can say there's a bunch of people who aren't listening to us, but like I don't even talk about that most of the time. I talk about it online because that's like we're directing our message toward the people who may have never heard this before. But generally speaking, once you see what you like can't unsee, like Frederick Douglass when he realizes I'm a slave, and he's like, I don't need to be a slave. It's an amazing thing. You can't take it off of your mind, because no one else sees it. You have an obligation to share it with them. Now, finding out how to share it with them is another story. I think, again, the paperwork can drive them away. The over strict objective morality natural law crowd can even drive them away. The approach of anger that Mark Passio has can drive them away. There's different things that can
I drive a lot of people away.
Yeah, and that's fine. And people can drive them away. It doesn't. It's not like I'm concerned about like necessarily everybody driving other people away, because the truth is an individual journey. Like an individual has to pursue it on their own. And there's going to be different people speaking this knowledge, and they're going to have different approaches. And you can't expect everybody to have the same approach as you. If you don't like the way somebody's doing something, then you do it better yourself. But if the truth is the truth, we can all observe it no matter where we are in the world. That means then the paperwork and all this other stuff is not universal and timeless. Unless, again, it is based on natural law, but then it's just representing something that is already there and therefore doesn't need to be said on paper. Unless it's there to educate them. But then if you get stuck on the paper, then it's an attachment, and then you're actually going down another road of materialism. So,
Yep.
like, if somebody wrote on a piece of paper and said, it is wrong to murder someone, it's like, I don't need you to write it on the piece of paper. It's just wrong anyways, right?
Yep.
But people believe that the piece of paper is what makes it wrong. And that's what this belief system of statism is. It's like people believe other human beings have authority. No, they're just human beings. So getting to the natural reality, the common sense reality, like you said, it's like, do we even have senses? Do we realize who are human, who's living, and who's dead, who's a corporation, who's not even somebody who, even knows you millions of miles away? It's like people believe and they don't know. They believe in these humans having some magical powers over their life to do actions that they can't do. And that's just not common. That's not common sense. It's not moral. It's contradictive. So once you start to see that, you can't unsee it. And it's great because you get to then act more in a less of a contradictive way in your own life. Like you said, if you want to create the better world, why should you sit on the couch and just eat junk food all day? It's like clearly there's a contradiction there that isn't being seen, right? But if you do see the bigger picture, you see, okay, wait, I have to take care of myself to take care of other people. I need to do both. This is an integrative, harmonious effort.
Yeah, and like when you guys are talking about like distractions and just like stuffing yourself with things, and then just living in a very like contradictory way to how you're actually perceiving things. Like absolutely, and like just like with me, like I was telling you off air, Corey. Like I've mentioned it already, like in a couple live streams recently. Like my freaking room's a pigsty. I had a bunch of stuff on my bed. I shoved it to the sides. Yeah, like now, like I'm kind of constricted, so you came and see my bed. But like I came in, I'm not even getting my own room in order. So it's like, how am I even expecting to create order in the world if I came and get my own basic freaking bedroom done? And it's literally just my stuff that I have to work with. So yeah, it's just about commitment, taking the time to do it, and just knowing the goal that you have in mind. It's more so the journey, not the actual destination, because you know that you're living more in line with how you actually want to be, like the things you actually want to do. So it's
and your personal choices. Like you don't have to do it. Like it's not harming anybody if you don't do it. And now it might be harming yourself, and that's where we have to question. But then it becomes a vice. It's not a crime. Like as Lysander Spooner said in his writings, a vice is something you do to yourself that might be harmful, but a crime is something you do to someone else that's harmful. And so vices are not crimes, is what he made as a primary argument, saying that there's so many people in jail for victimless crimes. Why are they in jail? They didn't hurt anybody. They just hurt themselves potentially, but that's their own body. They have the right to choose what to do with their own body because it's their own, right?
Lysander was one of my favorites.
Yeah, is it? Cool. That's cool.
Yeah, so I definitely wanted to cover at least some basic like resources for people. So if this piqued anybody's interest, is if there's anything that you guys would recommend in terms of books or websites. I know I mentioned in our chat that like I'm totally open to sharing like someone's screen. So if you have something like online that you'd like to show, absolutely, we can get that going immediately. Just to help out other people if they're interested and want to do a little bit more digging.
I do have a page which says the problem with voting and paperwork. I usually put those two together, usually due to the man-made symptom management nature of the two. But again, not that I deter people from paperwork because it's separate from voting. It's just recognizing something higher. Again, what I talk about with abolitionism and voluntarism is addressing the root cause of the problem, which is the belief system and statism itself. So I actually have a website page that people can go to if they want to learn about that. And I have some people on there who talk about it from different perspectives, and I have like a documentary on politics in case anybody here thinks voting is a good idea. Anyone's here who thinks political action is the way we're going to attain freedom, even though it's been tried for over 300 years. But it's called the liberator.us/politics. So the liberator.us/politics, and I do think that combined efforts as these that are voluntary, that are helping individuals become more self-sustainable and pay attention to what's going on, are going to work with each other. So be it growing food, doing the paperwork and stuff among those lines, realizing the corporate fictions and all the lies. I think that all ties in because I meet a lot of people who that's where they start. They either start with realizing they were lied to in the food supply, they were lied to in the government, they were lied to, and it's something somewhere along the lines they realized they were lied to, and that led them to a further search in truth. So I'm not against any which way that helps people find it. Even Ron Paul, when he just went up on stage and started speaking, even though he didn't win, that his educative ability to just be there made an impact on its own. And that's it. Like if people can do so in a voluntary fashion, not seek positions of authority, not reinforce the belief system, they can actually do a lot of change. So Ron Paul will probably be one of the few people who can do so in the political realm. But him not winning is actually kind of like important because it made a lot more people actually look toward his works actually. And I interviewed a lot of them. I interviewed over 50 people in the End of Slavery Summit, and I asked them their personal experiences, and a lot of them said, "Hey, it was Ron Paul. It was 2008, the banking collapse. It was 9/11, right?" So it's whatever events in their life that got shooken up, basically, saying like, "You need to pay attention to what's going on," because you're letting some people rule over your life. You wouldn't have to worry about it if you didn't have that in the first place, but because you do, it's just a matter of time till you realize it. And I think people will start to realize it as the world becomes more and more tyrannical, which it will. It will inevitably become more tyrannical until people start growing food for themselves, becoming self sustainable, and speaking for themselves in the case of using the language properly or anything that allows the individual to be an individual, essentially. Because this system is based on collectivism. It's based on the idea that the individual should give away their rights for the greater good, the common good, for whoever's in charge, whoever's in power. And Carl Jung talks about this. He says, even if you have a constitutional government, it inevitably turns into an oligarchy, an autocracy, a technocracy, all forms of dictatorship, essentially, even the most limited forms. Because human beings think they can impose a system on other human beings. And it doesn't work like that, because then you're assuming the role of nature or truth or God itself. And so that goes back to my previous point. And that's why it's very much the solution to look at the root cause, which is nature or truth itself. So even if somebody's stuck in a religion or stuck in a certain ideology, okay, great. But don't be closed to the others. Don't say yours is the only way and say that you need your way imposed upon everyone else. And if they don't follow you, you're going to use violence against them. Because guess what? A lot of the wars in history were caused because of that. One or few people having millions of people follow them, believe in their authority, and believe that their ideology was so right that it should be imposed on everyone with violence. You can think whatever you want, just don't use violence and you're done. That's it. End of story.
Yeah. I know you're just breaking it down so well. I appreciate that, Cory, very much. If you want to also just like describe your the website that you made, like what people can find. I obviously there's some articles and videos about the Liberator 2. You can send your article. Ooh, if you want to describe that a little bit for people that are maybe like in this kind of creative space already. If they're not aware of what that is, I'm one of those people that's not aware.
Yeah, so the Liberator.us is a website created for anybody if they want to send an article, turn it into a video for them. There's also a networking page as well. So the Liberator.us/network, and you can connect with other people on different servers, Telegram, Skype, Facebook, whatever it is. And you can send me your server. I'll add it to the list. It's basically a one-stop hub for everything freedom and action, and showing people that politics is not the only solution, and there's a reason why it fails. It's because it's, again, reinforcing the root cause. So this website is focused on the root cause, and it does so through the lens of abolitionism and the 18th century, well, 19th century, the 1800s. William Lloyd Garrison in particular. This is why it's the Liberator 2, because it's continuing the Liberator 1, which is the main, typically considered the main abolitionist newspaper at that time, which really helped settle in the moral points of why humanity is humanity. And that's why slavery ended. It didn't end because somebody put on a piece of paper and said slavery is wrong and it's now abolished. No, it ended because people don't agree with slavery and they think it's not necessary for humanity. It's not natural. It's not moral, right? It's not even economically productive, even though everybody who was promoting slavery said, well, without slavery, we can't do anything. Well, we find out the truth is actually the truth, and it supports everything that is truthful. So everybody has their fears of a free world. Well, what would we do without this, and what about without that? And because of that, they remain in their slavery. You can't fear freedom. Freedom is something that can't be feared because freedom is reality. You'll be fearing reality if you fear freedom.
Excellent, man. Excellent. I know I gotta start digging into this. This is really good. Thanks for all that you're doing. So if you want to just break it down really quick, like what's the whole process of like creating a website? Is it really complicated? Is it convoluted? Should people be like scared of doing that? Should they even put their time into it, or is there something, or is it something that's pretty streamlined? And it doesn't
I
take
use
too much
Wix.
effort.
I use simple tools. I'm not like too crazy. It's drag and drop. That's the answer. I just drag and drop, boop bop. That's it. And then you can, or you can hire somebody to do it, or there's different templates that they have online for different websites to do it.
Yeah, I use BraveNet, and I did some drop and drag or drag and drop, whatever. But I also did a lot of my own programming, trying to get back into the programming scheme. So I did a lot of my own programming. That's one of the things I'm working on now. I can't seem to find a programmer that can help me with a video audio platform just like this, a streaming platform on my site. So I'm trying to learn that so I can do that myself. So we'll see how that turns out. That might take it's a little bit more in-depth language, and I'm doing it all without any college or anything. I'm doing it all. Everything I do is always online, everything. I've never been to school beyond high school.
Yeah, I mean, you live in the age of mass information. Why not use it, right? So.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, the English language is a beautiful thing. This internet, it's the most amazing library you'll ever get your hands on that will do nothing but continue to grow.
It's a product of freedom, and it breeds more freedom because of it. And so that's why people are starting to censor others, and that's why the companies are attempting to do that. But the internet's the internet; it wants to be free. You can see people like constantly leaking stuff and making everything open source because everybody wants it to be. Like it's like you put an ant in a jar, and it's like it tries to escape endlessly. It's like humans are the same way. Any animals the same way. They want to be free. And in any human's attempt to try to control their people's freedoms, it's just going to backfire. Freedom is our natural state. But even more so is recognizing that freedom is built upon morality and respecting each other. Because as humans, we have these complicated minds that get in our own way, and so it's not just the instincts; it's also up here. We create all the ideologies. So it's either we're acting instinctually and we just don't know what we're doing at all, and then we harm someone, or we're thinking so much about it, we think some way must be the only way, and then we end up harming someone. Certainly, there's got to be a mid ground.
Well, everything we have today in regards to all the technology and everything, that's physical evidence that we do manifest. And every last one of it was, every last bit of this has been done for the good of mankind. It's just that some people use it in other ways. But every last bit of it was done for the good of mankind. Even the monetary system was done for the good of mankind. It does have its good, useful, intentful purposes. It's just a matter of learning how it works and how to work with it, not let it work you.
Yeah. Yeah, we often sometimes assume like we create something for a problem, and that solution may not actually be the rooted solution. So we do have to be careful. Like somebody, for instance, might go on a diet and say, "Well, it's because of the processed food, and that's why I'm going to be healthier by going on this diet." And they probably will become a little healthier because it's not the standard American diet. So like any diet will probably help them, but is it the most like root targeting diet for that individual at that time? They're being fed a bunch of different things, and you have to get past all the barriers. It's like, are you creating a diet because of another diet failed? And then are you just creating another diet after that? It's like, oh, did I create a new drug because that other drug failed? And now I'm just creating another drug after another drug after another drug after another drug. When do I ever get to the root cause of the problem? This is what humans have been doing with their man-made creations, is they think they can be fulfilled through creating these systems or creating anything in their life, when in reality, they can become fulfilled in their own life. Um, with not actually having more things, but less things. This is why the Eastern world was like, you desire to be happy, get rid of the I, that's ego, the desire, that's like suffering, and then you're just left with happiness, right? We get in our own way so much. And the East often brings that perspective to the West, which a lot of people in the West are always worried about doing more. Got to be more active. We got to go out there. We got to go fight these people. In reality, maybe it's not that can be counterintuitive, right? If we just went to the state with arms right now and we're like, we're going to take you down, it's probably not going to work out so well. But also, even if we did get our way, how far will it go? It won't go that far because you didn't build a foundation. You didn't go with the natural way of things. And people don't really understand like nature in the sense of letting things be and letting things go. They feel like they need to control everything, or at least they've been trained into thinking they have to. And the East says, no, we can actually have things work in order if we just let things be. Like the body can heal itself if we fast. Like that's amazing. I'm not adding anything new. I'm just literally doing nothing. And all of a sudden the body just comes back to life. What's going on? It's like same thing with the plant in nature. It's like maybe it's better off to leave it alone. Like you can plant it in the right soil, in the right environment, and you could be smart about it. But for most of the part, when it's growing, you're not doing anything. It's like there's like 1% of action, the 99% inaction. So what is actually more important, the action or the inaction? So a lot of people are not doing anything for the truth in this world. We consider them inactive. Okay, but they're active in other ways. So what are they spending their time and energy on? Perhaps they just need to put their time and energy on the things that matter rather than the things that don't matter. And who am I to say what matters? Well, that's the problem. Everybody's saying this is what matters, and that's why we're always concerned about it. This is why the man who really has virtue doesn't even need to talk about virtue. The man who already has nature doesn't even need to think about what is nature because it's so common sense. We don't even need to talk about it. It becomes second nature, as they would say. These are concepts I don't expect everybody to understand, but I go into a tangent. But the point is, like, even as you said, technology is a tool because as we evolved, notice people sometimes say, well, history is always going to repeat. Governments are just going to rise up again. Technology is new. Like a lot of things were new. We ended slavery after thousands of years. That's a new thing. So for people to say it just commonly repeats and there's no progression and there's no aim, there's no goal, they're lying because there's constantly new things being developed, quote unquote, new things. Yes, based in the same natural reality, but they're things that allow us to learn more and then thus align more to the world that we live in because our knowledge allows us to do so. And knowledge is the key, right? To all philosophy, to all science, the whole reason why we create all these things. Ignorance, we can easily see as the problem that keeps people in darkness. It's only used to prevent us from our own evolution, usually intentionally through deception or through our own ignorance. It's because we just don't see something higher and we don't see a purpose to do so. So I encourage people find that purpose, within their own life, see that higher truth And if common law and natural law is your way to do it, you know? But like have a higher purpose in your life. Because if you keep going toward the higher purposes, or like any one of us, we all care about the truth. We keep seeking the truth. The truth will bring us to where we need to be because we keep seeking it. We're always there for it. And we're not giving these other things that are derivatives of the truth or created by other people. We're not giving that our time and attention. We're giving the truth our undivided, just like as if we had love in our life, we'd give that our unconditional love and attention. So, is truth our unconditional condition? If so, I think that paperwork and voting and all these man-made mechanisms are left more to the back burner. And when you look at the grand scheme of things.
Yeah. I tell people that truth needs no defense. It is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it comes to me in my life, it's I let things happen the way I feel they should happen in the time that I feel they should happen. I'm not a impatient guy. I let things happen and I try to live in the moment as much as I can. Of course, we always have some kind of planning and preventative measures that we try to work out. And that, of course, is due to our past experiences and things like that. So there's always those, previous experiences and looking forward, ambitiously, but always try to remain in the now time when it comes to the reality of things and recognizing that first and foremost.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of people have a hard time doing that. They get caught up in all of that research, all them rabbit holes. I got stuck in that for a little bit when I first started doing this, and I was that impatient guy, and I realized, wait a minute, it's all, pretty much all saying the same kind of thing throughout the different jurisdictions. All I got to do is start putting these puzzles together and see them for what they are. And that's going to take some time. It didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be resolved overnight. So therefore, the most important lesson is to have that patience. It'll come to you. It's meant to be. Don't fight it.
Wow. So like one of the overarching things I've been kind of thinking about with both you guys talking is like Cory, obviously you're really good at simplifying things, like breaking things down. Like when you're talking about like someone to like people can become more fulfilled with having less things or simplifying things, understanding like your own reality, where you're at, and being able to be okay with that. And then like Keith, you're talking like earlier, I think it was even off air when you were talking about like no, it was on air in your introduction when you were talking about like just like you doing yourself, like your own journey, and like working on yourself first and foremost. And like that's just like that. And I'm like the perfect example of somebody that would very much benefit from continuing to do that, because I have done that process a good amount and I've seen the benefits from it. But I just haven't gone all the way even further because I have added more trauma to my life and there's more things I got to work with. I'm still scared of sitting alone in the quiet, if I don't have my fan on. And it's like, oh my God. And there's nothing to be afraid of, So I would love to have both of you guys on because I've been talking about like shadow work. I'm starting to do kind of like a little bit of like a round table. Both of your guys' perspectives would be like incredible. I would really much appreciate that. I think that would be excellent for just anybody. Both of you guys are really down to earth. I really appreciate what you guys are saying. But yeah, just like, just breaking things down, being simple, like, and then like Cory, you're talking about like people want to like do things. We got to solve this. We got to do this. We got to do that. It's a lot of the yang energy. So like when you're talking, like we talked a little bit about like the Tao, the yin and the yang. A lot of people are in that masculine state of mind. Like they're always busy and they're distracting themselves and they're just trying to get things done and they're not sitting alone, contemplating, letting things be, and like going with the flow, kind of with what Keith was saying a little bit earlier. And just like being patient, not having that instant gratification. I'm guilty of that as well. I think it's very, very important. Like that's like the key fundamental thing that I'm seeing is we just gotta like quiet ourselves down, slow down a little bit. Yes, this is a very like stressful time, a little bit of a traumatic time. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think the people that are trying to like control us, I think they'd have to be like Three Stooges level of stupid to even fail. I hope I'm wrong. I hope they just like tie their own shoelaces and they trip over themselves and they like fall and everybody sees them. I hope that's the case. I don't try to like put them like as like a god, because they're definitely not that, but I definitely don't try to underestimate them. So it's
No, they're nothing.
like
Just people.
yeah, they are just people. They have fears as well.
Persons.
But Yeah.
Not
Person.
people.
There you go. Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Yeah. So Keith, if you had anything that you also wanted to show, I know you sent a couple links. I didn't know if it was just like your personal links, which I'm definitely going to put in the description. So if you can also like send those to me through like Messenger or something like that, I can copy paste those and put those in the description for people to find you and like what you're all about. But if you have like any sort of resources that you think would be valuable for people about common law or like basic understandings, I know you already had like 4 books that you mentioned before.
Yeah.
One of which you already said, which was Hitler's Willing Executioners. And there's a couple other ones if you want to describe those, and if you have like any sort of website or that you think that people could like get some good information from, any sort of good resource, just fire 'em away.
Well, first of all, it's the other than Hitler's Will and Executioners, I always mention in a concise English handbook. I think people fail in a lot of things they do because they don't understand the language as it's meant to be comprehended. So get back to the concise English handbook, and it doesn't really matter who, any edition anywhere, it's going to be pretty much the same. It hasn't really changed. A college composition handbook, which is going to help you learn how to put things together on paper, which is also going to help those that don't use the right left mind thing to coordinate that in doing so. That way you can start doing that in your mind, and that way you don't really have to have paperwork. Like our brother Cory was talking about, if it's truly a law written in your heart, you should be able to express it using concise English and composing it in the right manner. This is what I call coining your words or pursing your lips. And then, of course, the next one, King James Version of the Bible, which is what I use as my holy writs. So other than that, I dropped my link to the wordwisewarrior.art, and you can check on that. If you want to drop that down for everybody, they can go check on that. On the contact page, I support other channels. I'll go ahead and drop your channel down there, and that way people have a way to link up with you on my site as well. And you'll notice right there, that's a first page, home page. I use the Universal Postal Union copyright disclaimer for everything I do. And if you read that, it's basically admitting that you really don't know what you're talking about, but we can sit down and talk about it anytime. Facts are opinions, and opinions are facts. That's all it is.
You muted. There you go.
Yeah. So Keith, well, I know that you do, of course, do videos. What would be, in your opinion, your like most like important video that you've created?
Your big dummy corporations.
Big dummy corporations.
Yeah, big dummy corporations. YABIG dummy corporation. And I'll tell you the reason why. Under 15 USC 1602, the definition of credit card means any card, plate, or credit device used to obtain money, property, labor, or services on credit. So what is a Social Security card? It's a card used to obtain what? Generally services. Like healthcare services. And it's supposed to be done on credit. Public side is the front side, though, and everybody's using the Social Security number, and that gets converted to a liability on the public ledger. Whereas if you use the one on the back in its appropriate form, it's the credit pass-through. It's the private side, noticing that you are the creditor through the IMF.
Yeah, I will say, as an addition, there's a lot of people who, we consider influential in the world who know a lot of stuff like this, or know like how to put their own business into trust, and they have methods that aren't necessarily disclosed to the public. And even if there's other people handling their finances, a lot of them are also tax exempt. There's a lot of issues where they either know the system, using it against the people who don't know the system, or taking advantage of other people. And it's all because we created this overarching system that allows people to do that. And that overarching system is allowed by individuals comprising of that system just not caring at all. So, you know, like
they're just doing their job.
yeah, they're just doing their job. Exactly.
Hitler's
They're
willing
embracing their ignorance.
executions. They're the same thing. I'm just doing my job. You automatically should be thinking of Hitler's willing executioners.
Yeah, like whatever people think of us, like with our different methods of sharing truth and freedom, we care and we try. And you know, we also understand when, you know, we might push buttons too far or when, you know, things can be too much, and that's also a discipline always. But like there's a lot of people who just don't look at it at all. There's a lot of people who just don't care to begin with, you know, and those are always usually the people that are the problem, like the people who just don't give the time of day at all to see the human side of anything. Like I can talk to a scientist, totally left brain, you know, atheist or whatever, and I'm pretty sure I could still connect with them on a human level. You know, I could still find the humanity within them, and I wouldn't abandon them. I wouldn't say, hey, you know, you're down past that path. So um I don't consider people who are elites or in power, I don't consider them any different. I don't consider anybody any different. Even like distinctions between peoples and persons and citizen or not. I mean, we're all realizing we've been lied to. It doesn't make us special to realize that we understand something that other people don't. You know, it's like I feel sympathy for those of people who don't know anything at all about any of this because I don't blame them. I don't blame them for not knowing.
Yeah, like with me. Oh, go ahead, Keith.
Well, that's one of the things that I realized. You know, I used to be a very angry young man, thinking, you know, I really didn't like people because of the things they did. Then I had to realize that, wait a minute, I'm one of those people too. So I had to start kicking myself in my own ass. I was the damn fool all my life. I was the bitch ass slave all my life. I just saw it in others and didn't see it in myself. So now I have to realize they've been fooled just like I was. So I've got to give them the same leniency that I would give myself.
Right.
You know, it's
Perfectly
like
said.
I was saying earlier, that's the true sense of eye for an eye, is the leniency. Do you really want to hurt your brother because you're mad at him? Are you really his judge? Or would you prefer the leniency and repentance and forgiveness?
Yeah. Like if I was that person raised in the exact same way that person was raised in, I'd be exactly the same way they would be.
Yep.
You know? And Nicholas, I think you take it out on yourself, man. You're like, man, I got some stuff in the corner of my room I haven't paid attention to. I told you it doesn't matter too much. It's not harming everybody, you know. I get it. It's on your own mind. It's bugging you, but hey, here's the thing, right? You said you can't sit down in silence. Why? I'm just curious. Okay, like if I want to ask why. What's keeping your brain going? Or is there too many thoughts? Or there certain thoughts that you can't like sit down with yourself with? How come you can't sit in silence? This is just genuine question.
And that's a good one. All right, everybody, we are we're all out of time, so
We know.
I gotta go.
You know, I was going to mention that earlier when he said that too. I said the perfect thing for you to do is go spend 7 months in a mountain in a tent.
Yeah, I know. Like when you were talking about that, I'm like, oh my god, that's a lot of time, man. 7 months in a tent.
It takes time. Yeah,
but yeah,
I had a period of my life where I did that too. Actually, like constant reflection. And I think I probably should give it more credit than I actually say to people. Because that time gave me a lot of time to reflect. But
Oh yeah, I went to the top of a place down. Oh, it's in the Appalachian Mountains in New Hampshire area, and I went to a place called Frankenstein's Cliff. And I got to the top. I looked out, and I just started crying. I thought, my God, this is exactly where I'm meant to be, on top of the world. No matter where I'm at, I'm on top of the world. I don't care if it's on Frankenstein's Cliff. I don't care if it's in the deepest of the deepest valleys. That's the feeling that I have now. Ain't nobody can put me down.
that's a good way to look at it. Yeah, Cory, I didn't answer your question, so I'm not gonna let that one slip by. I think it's probably just a multitude of things. Like one of the things is my room, you know, being disorganized there. I'm kind of disorganized here. this trauma that's
Just
happened from
organize. What do you need to organize?
I got to put clothes away. I got to figure out like some things I'm just gonna like give away or sell or throw away. Got some weed hanging up that I have to trim and finish that up so I can jar it. Yeah, I just got. I mean, I've done a lot of prepping and stuff
Yeah,
like that,
look
so
at
I
what
also
Keith
have a
is
lot of
doing.
stuff.
Write it down, my friend.
I know.
Write it down. Don't have it all stuck in your head. Because like what I'm asking like is why can't you sit down with thoughts? I told you I have a list that's like unending of stuff and I don't even know what's on it. But that's the beautiful thing about it. It's because I wrote it down so I don't have to have it in my head all the time. I think that's awesome. Like that's why you can organize your thoughts on paper. That's like the whole point of like writing a book or anything. So you can't organize your thoughts up here. So if you're trying to organize your thoughts in your own head, I mean, that's actually just breathing, meditating, like letting your thoughts go. That's organizing your thoughts in your own head. But organizing your thoughts should be done on paper because then you can actually organize them, put them in order, whatever you want to do. It makes life so much easier. Do you ever do that? Like,
Yeah. I mean, I do like I have written down things at times. Like I did do journaling for like 2 years straight, and that totally helped me out. I was able to see like a lot of inconsistencies within my own life, and like how I was definitely not like being consistent in some areas, and I was being really good in some other areas. So totally
I just
adds
don't want
with
you
the
to put yourself
clarity.
down, dude.
Um, But yeah, like everything you guys have said, like I mean, I've done some of it, but it's also just being consistent about it, and like yeah, just writing some of these things down. I mean, how many other interviews am I going to do where I'm still talking about the same thing? Like I gotta do something about it because I know that it's important to me and it is affecting me in a I would say in a pretty big way. So
So one of the things to coordinate with that journal then is maybe to pick up and start doing that journal again. And then when you find things that need to be taken care of, schedule them. So now you've got a journal and a schedule. It's just like the journal and a ledger.
yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah,
do the same thing actually. I have a calendar and I have notes, and I only use those two things to reference off of. If I think of an idea, I write it down immediately and then I let go of it. I don't have to keep it on my mind. I know also that I'll probably lose the idea if I don't write it down. Like it helps me not only like assure that my thoughts do remain, but also that I keep myself organized and can let it go so I can focus on what is happening now. So I can stay in the now.
yeah. Because I remember I had like a short stint where I was writing down my dreams right when I woke up, and I remember a dream from 10 years ago because I wrote it down. And I don't even have the piece of paper anymore, but I just remember it because I did that. So yeah, just to go along with that point. So all right, so we're at over an hour. This has been fucking fantastic. I really appreciate it, guys. If you guys can just stay on the line just for a quick couple minutes afterwards. But before we do that, just let everyone know where they can find you. If you guys want to obviously take your turns, that's gonna be the orderly way to do it. Just let people know where they can find you. If you got anything like new coming up, anything exciting, or things that you're going to be delving into, or just any final words as well.
Well, I'll go ahead and I'll just drop my 3 YouTube links in the lower chat. It'll be the @ link, so you won't have to worry about hitting a link. Just copy paste it into the YouTube search and it bring up my channel. And then of course there's wordwisewarrior.art. I think you already dropped that for him, didn't you?
I shared it in the on the screen, but I did not post that yet. But I think I'm going to do that.
But yeah, if you want to do that, and like I said, I'll add you to the list of contacts on there. Cory, I'll go ahead and I've got your site too. I'll go ahead and pop that on there if you've got my permission, or if I've got your permission.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I like the fact that you're doing that for people. That's really cool.
Yep. We'll go ahead and do that. And God bless. I appreciate you having me up, brother. Good to meet you,
I'm
Cory.
nice meeting you, dude. I really appreciate your insights. You seem very open and you seem like you have like a really unique approach to things too. I appreciate that.
All glory goes to him.
All right, Cory. So yeah, if you have any final words, let
Nothing
anybody
much,
know
my friend. I
anything.
just don't want you to put yourself down. That's it. I have nothing else to say other than don't put yourself down. Anybody out there, including you. You can be
Yeah,
the host. You can be an interviewer. I can be a content creator. We can do a bunch of things. It doesn't make us any better than anyone else. Like, don't put yourself down. Don't put yourself up. Like, we're all on the same boat, on the same trajectory.
Thank you for saying that, because I do point that out a lot. Like, I let people know, hey, just because I'm doing this freaking interview doesn't mean I got all my stuff together. I'm definitely not going to be the one that just fakes it till
You
you
don't
make
have to.
till
That's
you
the
make
thing,
it.
though.
Yeah,
The idea that it's like, oh, I have to be this image. That's that's all these celebrities trying to be something that they're not. No,
yeah,
I'm not part of that. No, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. All right, so just stay on really quick, guys. All right, thank you everybody who's been watching. Very much appreciate it. Have a blessed day, and anyone that's watching in the future, thank you so much, and take care.